Great. Welcome, everyone. Exactly on the right spot, Marietta turned on her video since she is the star of today's talk. My name is Tobias Spöri. I am the moderator of today's talk, and I work at the University of Vienna at the Political Science Department, which is hosting those lectures called IPW lectures, which is a lecture series touching upon various topics of interest. And I'm quite glad that Marietta is able to join us tonight for this talk to give an overview what is happening in the city of Budapest regarding political participation, inclusiveness, all those things. Before I'm going to start with a short introduction, just be aware of that this talk is recorded and it will be made available on the website of the Department of Political Science, just the audio file, so no worries if you turn on your video later on and you don't think your hair is looking great. So we're just gonna conserve the audio file so you can re-listen to it if you want to. Today's topic is certainly of interest since the situation in Hungary is on the national level looking quite bleak. I mean, just recently, when it comes to the World Press Freedom Index, Hungary was ranked 92nd out of 180 countries, which is an exception for an EU member state. But I'm sure you're all familiar with the state of democracy in Hungary. We have seen the EU struggling with dealing the situation in Hungary, most notably the European People Party and Fidesz. So what we see in the last years is that democratic standards deteriorate further and further. And this is kind of standing in contrast to what is happening in the city of Budapest since the local elections in 2019 were a more progressive, led by a Green candidate, political coalition took over the city and was putting some democratic innovations, or is on the way to putting some democratic innovations into action. And this is what Marietta is working mostly, I suppose, on at the moment. I mean, I think we've all heard about democratic innovations, or mostly you might have heard of democratic innovations. So basically, those are processes, or can also be institutions, developed to deepen the role of citizens in government's processes, to increase opportunities for participation, deliberation, and influence. You might have heard of participatory budgeting, youth parliaments, climate councils, or also citizens' assemblies. So there's a lot of stuff out there, but it's quite new for some Central Eastern European countries to actually realize such things. And Marietta will share her insights from the city of Budapest in the talk in a second. Just to briefly introduce Marietta, she is the senior advisor to the mayor of Budapest on citizen participation. So she is actually responsible for introducing new methods of citizen engagement, and I'm happy to listen to her talk in a second. She studied at ELTE University in Budapest, Media and Communication Science, one of the few public universities after the reform of the university system in Hungary. And she also studied sociology and social anthropology at the Central European University, a university which had to move from Budapest to the city most of us are located currently in, which is the city of Vienna. She has then been working for several companies dealing with participation and urban planning, with a strong focus on digital activities. I think it is quite interesting to see persons like Marietta coming kind of into politics, playing an active role and shaping democratic institutions in a city like Budapest. So once again, a warm welcome to you, Marietta. I think you can share your slides again. and I will just hand over to you. About the schedule, Marietta will talk about 45 to 60 minutes, so we have enough time to ask questions to Marietta afterwards. So, Marietta, I'm glad that you're here, at least virtually, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, and thank you very much for this invitation. So I'll start with a brief intro of myself, and I'll also talk a bit about my background. It's sad that we have to start with a sad tone regarding Hungary's democratic position. I am a bit happier or in a better position compared to perhaps other people, because I can work on making the situation better, and I'll bring examples of that to you. So as Tobias said, I am the senior advisor on citizen participation to the mayor of Budapest, Gergely Karácsony. He was elected to mayor in 2019 October, and that was when I joined the municipality. So today I'm going to talk about the vision of engagement in Budapest, or citizen engagement. So what you need to see, what's changed in 2019, and this is completely my view, is something that has to do with local politics. So as perhaps all of you know, and this is an academic environment, so you know very well that the city has been a location of contest, as we know. So local communities are also very important part of local politics, and many have observed the 2019 local elections as part of going back to local communities and fixing politics from below. And local municipalities have been a common ground for many people. And so in Budapest, there is a two-tiered local government. That means that there is a municipal government, which I work for, and there are district local governments. Actually, the Municipality of Budapest is not really the boss of the other district governments, and the mayors of those districts are part of the General Assembly of the Municipality of Budapest, so they do have to work together. And of course, there are all kinds of political relations between the district local governments, but officially there is no upper or lower level in terms of that. But in terms of citizen engagement, for example, it's a very different position from being part of district government, because the Municipality of Budapest sits at a higher level, so we basically don't have any residents. We have everyone in Budapest. That means that we are a bit further away from residents when it comes to citizen engagement. So this is a general context to my work. And as it has been mentioned, so the mayor is someone who is promoting progressive urban planning. So last year, for example, a lot has changed in Budapest in terms of the situation of cycling. For example, temporary bike lanes have been introduced during the first wave of the coronavirus. So if you have been to Budapest, and I guess many of you have, especially in the city center, you can clearly see the change. And this is perhaps, you know, my starting point. So for me, that was perhaps the first big visible change that that was made during the mayor's time, because before, the Grand Boulevard of Budapest wouldn't have been a nice place to cycle, for example, and now it has a permanent bike lane. So, and these are the things that, you know, somehow people interact with the city through its infrastructure. There is a lot of promises around changing the city, contesting the city, all kinds of things that happen around what's yours, what's mine, where is the money invested, and how we develop stuff in Budapest. And so my work is affected very much by that. And I'm just going to share my slides and start the presentation. Yeah. So a bit more about my background. So before joining the municipality, I have worked for járókelő, which means pedestrian in Hungarian. So actually worked for means I founded an NGO that is called járókelő. The poster says on the picture, do not look through. And so I talked in my first intro a lot about how people are contesting politics or create contentious politics in the city. So járókelő is a website where you can report potholes and other infrastructural problems to municipal governments. Actually, that's where a lot of my understanding and knowledge about municipalities come from. So for me, joining the municipality was kind of like the next step in my career, as well as because I worked on other programs as well that addressed citizen participation and urban planning. So another example I wanted to highlight was Place Builder. It's a platform that allows people to build together strategies, visions for neighborhoods in the UK. This was built by London-based startup called The Future Fox, and I acted as a product owner for Place Builder. And so this was also something I really believed in, that digital tools help us interact with other people and help us engage with the city as well. And before joining the municipality, I worked a lot on these kind of projects that help people interact with their municipal governments. And so going to Budapest, so the city has released its new 7-year strategy recently, which is called At Home in Budapest. So At Home in Budapest has 3 main aspects, which are firstly, that Budapest cares about the residents, it cares about people. We have a specific word for that, which kind of means an enabling city, or a city that creates opportunities. So this means that there is a focus on social issues and building more inclusive cities. That is the first aspect. The second aspect is a city that is caring about greenery. So that means that protecting the green areas in the city is very important. And one of the first things that the mayor introduced when he was elected was climate crisis in Budapest, climate emergency. So that means that the issue of climate change is treated as a much more important topic now at the level of Budapest. I will talk a little bit about how we did citizen engagement around that as well. So the greenery and the climate adaptation are very important issues for us at the moment. And then thirdly, and this is my area of work, making Budapest more open to citizens, talking with people and making better decisions by involving them in the decision-making process. So today I will talk a little bit about how we kind of do this. It's a very hands-on exchange that I'm gonna deliver here. So we do lots of projects and we think about the city a lot and think about how we can make Budapest much better. And so, you know, there is a lot of work to do. So for example, at the moment, the Municipality of Budapest is a 900 people's worth of administration. That means it's a huge municipal administration, even in Hungarian terms. So a lot of people work here, and I can, so I guess I won't surprise you with the fact that there is a lot of bureaucracy around. So transforming the municipality and making it better work for people is a massive job. And restoring trust with residents is also our job. And it's kind of impossible to do citizen engagement without having to do this. So my example is always coming from my work with Járókelő, the street fixing website, where we have waited days and days for municipal governments to respond to simple reports of potholes. The law actually says that the municipal government has 30 days to respond to such a report. And believe it or not, the municipal governments, many of them, they do really take 30 days to kind of acknowledge that you have sent a report to them. So, and then if you are interacting with the citizens like that, then the expectation of the citizens will be really low in terms of what they can, what trust they can put in you. So when I'm inviting people to take part in a citizens assembly or other citizen engagement initiative, I always think about, okay, but then the last time they perhaps interacted with the local government, their experience was not the best. So we need to fix that too. What we are doing at the moment as well is trying out new things. We keep looking at new participatory methods, and we give them a go, and we make a list, and we try to figure out what works best for us, what works best for Budapest. And lastly, we are working very hard on changing how we work, and that will be my last point, the introduction of service design in the working of the municipality. So that is also something that's completely new in Budapest. Service design in government is something that has been trending in other countries, but for us it is very new, and actually based on what I've just said about how the municipal government working looks like, you will see that introducing a resident first approach in a municipal administration is actually very hard. So one of the first things that we did with the mayor and the new leadership of the municipality is creating a unit or a department for citizen engagement. So I am now not only an advisor to the mayor, but I'm also a head of unit for citizen engagement in Budapest. Our unit is called Open Budapest. And this is my team on the picture. Actually, there's more people now, so we are very lucky that new people are joining our team. And this was the founding of the team in November last year. So what do we do as a team of Open Budapest to restore trust with residents? So I said before that there is kind of like a participatory turn in the municipal government. So many of the municipal governments actually hired people who understand citizen participation. They either build new teams or at least have one person who has seen citizen participation initiatives before. So this has been very much on the table, at least at the local government level in Hungary. And this participatory turn is allowing us to try to make systemic change in this local government system. And so there are classical or more traditional participatory methods you might know. For example, community planning. So the images I'm showing now are from our project on the Roman beach. It's a very nice area of Budapest that people enjoy. It's on the Danube river banks. It's a very contested area because of its flood protection issues. So there is some housing built in the area that can be, or that is sometimes flooded by the Danube river. And the protection of those houses and the future of the area is a contested issue at the moment, and it was something that the mayor promised to deal with when he becomes the leader of Budapest. And this was one of the projects where I think it was a very good idea to try and go ahead and resolve politicize issues with new tools such as citizen participation. So we went in, Marietta, my colleague, he led a co-creation process with people living in the area and people having interests in the area, and try to create a vision for the Roman beach. And actually creating a vision or a strategy level description of how this area should look in the next 10-15 years is just the very first step. So the next steps will be following up and do more detailed planning on the flood protection intervention, its methods, and how it could be done based on the residents' preferences. So this part of the work has finished just a month before now, and it has been more of a traditional community planning project, but this is where we always go back to, and it was also at the time, started at the time when we could still meet outside at least, and I have to say, and you perhaps also know, that going online and not being able to meet people to discuss and deliberate is very hard for us who work in citizen participation. So many of our projects have been either halted or changed a lot by the effect of the pandemic. This was later than the pictures that were taken before. So I think I took this picture in September last year. So at the time we could still meet outside with people, and we held a climate assembly, which was proposed by an NGO called DEMNET to the municipal government. So we worked together with DEMNET to hold a climate assembly over 2 weekends. And the assembly, the members made proposals that could be included in the climate strategy of Budapest. That has also been just published like a month ago, I think. So things you are seeing now is actually a year's worth of planning and work that has its fruits just recently. So what I'm talking about is all our most recent work. And so these people that you are seeing on the slide, 50 people have been invited out of about 300 who accepted our invitation. So if you know the methodology of calling together a citizens assembly, you perhaps know that usually a larger amount of invitations are sent out. So we sent out 10,000 invites in the name of the mayor to residents living in Budapest, residents who represent the demographic of Budapest by the statistics. And so out of the 10,000, about 340 people responded with a yes to our invitation, and out of those we invited 50 people to be part of the climate assembly. And so the assembly put together a prioritized list of proposals for our colleagues in the climate issues department, which is also a new department of the municipality. So actually the climate issues have been also lifted to an institutional level at the municipal government. And we went through with these proposals for 2 weekends. It was a massive work, and believe it or not, even sending out the invitations or trying to figure out how we can receive a list of residents by the demographics has been a completely new thing for the municipality of Budapest. So we are actually very lucky that our town clerk believes in democratic participation and knows why our work is very important and helps us a lot with figuring out how to get around or how to resolve these legal issues that come up when it comes to doing completely new kind of work in the municipal administration. And so holding a citizens' assembly is also that kind of initiative. And we actually had very good experience with this kind of methodology, and we are thinking about holding a new citizens' assembly this year, starting with the methodology of inviting about 10,000 people, and then following on that, building an assembly that can help us with making better decisions. So the final topic for this year hasn't been decided, but we felt that this methodology was something that could work a lot for the municipality, and it was a great experience for the people too. So it was some kind of a democratic experiment or a democratic activity that we can do together, and figure out how we can be better at holding conversations across the aisle and making things happen, even if we don't agree with each other, and making this city to work better. So this was our experience with the climate assembly. And yeah, however, I said the climate assembly has been an example of restore trust. It has also been an example of trying out new things. But currently, the biggest project my team is working on as a new methodology that we are trying out is the introduction of participatory budgeting in Budapest. So we started the first cycle of participatory budgeting in 2020 October, and we collected proposals for 3 months for 1 billion Hungarian forints. That is a part of our development budget. So that means that citizens and residents of Budapest can decide about the fate of 1 billion Hungarian by proposing what we should spend this money on. In terms of the extent of the project, I have to say that this has been a transformative thing for the municipal administration, because the municipal administration has to go through each and every proposal and have a look at if they can technically do it. This went on for another 3 months. So at the moment, we are just after the citizens' assembly phase of participatory budgeting. That means that we actually asked a smaller assembly of Budapest residents to discuss the projects that have gone through the technical check. That means they reviewed the project and they kind of finalized what can be voted for. And we are just standing before the voting phase starts. So my team is currently working on figuring out how we can make voting happen in May. So it's a massive issue for us and a massive project. So I was trying to, show this picture. So this also started at the time when people could still meet. I think we only had 2 times when we could meet residents in 2 districts. So our plan was to go to as many district governments as possible and meet local residents there. As I told you, so the Municipality of Budapest doesn't have direct connections with the residents as good or as deep as the local district would have. So in each and every case, we relied on colleagues who work in local governments, and they helped us bring together residents who actually played with this board game that's on the picture, and the board game was developed by the Municipality of Helsinki. It's a board game under the Creative Commons license, and it has been translated by a Hungarian university, the Corvinus University, professors and students into Hungarian, and we actually changed it a bit to to make it work for our participatory budgeting cycle. And so we could go to 2 district governments in person and try to work with and develop ideas with residents. And you can see on the picture they were quite happy about that. And so we managed to hold 2 of those, and the rest of them was completely online. And I have to say that ideation sessions weren't as successful online as they were in person. So if I had to change something about this, it's actually the way we try to implement the online versions of the board game. So there have been people who joined, but the in-person sessions were much more enjoyable and much better, I think, for the participants as well. And I have brought you a word cloud of the proposals we received. So the most popular topics have been creating NGO hubs, so civil hubs for NGOs by the municipality, trying to promote composting in the local communities, bringing higher the number of public toilets in Budapest. It's a very sensitive and popular issue, so received a lot of proposals about making that better in Budapest. Creating new zebra crossings, creating new bike lanes, and making everything greener in general. Actually, the greenery related proposals have been highest in number. We actually had 3 categories people could propose from. They were delivered from the Budapest strategy. So one category was the greenery and climate change proposals. One category was the enabling city or the caring city proposals. The 3rd category actually has been bigger proposals. So we limited the budget of the first 2 categories to 50 million Hungarian, and the 3rd category involved projects that can have a bigger budget with 250 million Hungarian forints. So that allowed us to allow people to introduce bigger projects or projects that involve at least 3 districts population in size or number. And we received 687 proposals throughout the 3 months. And so this is our latest statistics. We had to reject about 410 of them. That means that there have been some criteria that the rejected proposals didn't fill. For example, we couldn't deal with anything that was proposed for state or central government related area. We only work with proposals that are tied to either to the Municipality of Budapest or to a district government. And some of the proposals have been rejected based on not fitting the categories they went for, and some of the proposals have been just not proposals per se. So this is how the number 277 comes in. And but you can see the 277 proposals then filtered down to 142. So 142 was reviewed by the Citizens Assembly. That means that we invited 50 people to discuss the proposals and tell us which should go on the voting ballot. And the voting will start in May. So the participatory budgeting, in those terms, it's a massive project with different phases, and it's a very transformative project, not only for the municipality but also for Budapest residents. It's kind of a complex project to communicate about, but in terms of bringing in new ideas, and creating the legitimacy and openness that we want to work with in the municipality. It's a very good initiative, and I always say that this is the project that kind of makes the local government work for people. So we go in and we kind of tell our colleagues in the municipal administration that this time you have to look at the proposals with the eye of, if someone tells me to do this, then how do I make it happen? What are the ways I can resolve any burdens, bureaucracy that are around this project? Because I am working for the people, and I need to review the projects with that mindset from now on. And a completely different thing that comes back to trying out new things is sadly coronavirus rapid testing. I know that this is something you are also familiar with in your city. In Budapest, a larger scale rapid testing was introduced by the Municipality of Budapest. My team has worked on developing the service for that. So that means that we figured out how we can deliver rapid testing and how we can deliver it safely. So we ran 2 campaigns, one in December and one in February, for 5 and then later for 10 days. We were helped by over 200 volunteers actually, who helped other residents do the administration around the rapid testing, just figuring out how it works, answering questions, and helping with the testing itself. With the administration, and the testing was done by a healthcare provider. And a big step for the municipal government in terms of the testing was developing a software for scheduling testing appointments. We actually released this software as an open source software, and there is one municipal government other than ours that is using it now to deliver street rapid testing at the moment. And I am trying to highlight somehow the legal wonder that was done here, because open source software is not something that happens a lot in Hungarian local governments. So it was a big work for our legal team to be able to release the software under the MIT license, and again, making it work for the community rather than being blocked by legal constraints or just the fact that there hasn't been any examples ahead of us from before. So we made it happen, and the software is actually uploaded to GitHub, which is the go-to for open source code. So if you check for the Municipality of Budapest, then you can actually find our profile there. As someone who works a lot with digital and has a background in developing digital projects, for me it was a massive success, and I really liked working on even the legal background of the release of the software. But again, here another experience for the municipality was actually interacting with the citizens directly. So because the Municipality of Budapest is a bit further away from residents, there are less interactions in general with the residents. So the current municipal government is changing that. So having volunteers is also a completely new thing. I remember when I joined the municipality, there still have been a lot of questions around if we can actually have volunteers in the local government. Meanwhile, from the outside, people have been asking every day how they can help. And these are the initiatives like the rapid testing, where, for example, with the administrative tasks, people could help a lot. So it was a big change for us, and it was something that my colleagues liked a lot, and the volunteers liked a lot as well, as an experience where people help each other, and residents actually feel that they can make change happen, and they can do something good for each other. And lastly, I wanted to talk about how we are working very hard on making change happen in the municipality. This photo is from my favorite author in service design, Lou Down. So a good service is good for your users, your staff, your organization, and the world. This is one of the inspirations that we work with, designing good services in Budapest. And what does this mean? Because I guess it might sound very generic to you, but it is again a big change for us. And it is causing us a massive headache sometimes, because the bureaucratic burden is really high when it comes to a municipal government. I know that there are other countries as well where bureaucracy is really high when it comes to interacting with the state or a local government. In Hungary, we kind of joke around about the inflexibility and impermeability of bureaucracy when it comes to communicating with residents, and residents trying to resolve their own problems. Just asking a question from a municipal government can be a huge issue, starting with letters, as I said, that come in 30 days. Hopefully emails, and not something that's been printed and stamped on and signed and then scanned back to you. But then you wait for an email for 30 days, and the email contains legalese that you cannot understand. And then when you try to contact someone who can help you with your issue, then you cannot reach a person. So you kind of can imagine the anti-example of good service. And now we are trying to change that. And I'm not saying everything is working badly at the Municipality of Budapest, not at all, but many of the practices have been there for a long time, starting with doing a lot of paperwork, and I mean printed paperwork. And at the moment, my colleagues are working on co-creating service design principles for the municipality. That means that just today our town clerk sent out an invite to a workshop where we will talk about service design principles with our colleagues, and try to figure out what could work for us, and what kind of change we can make happen in the upcoming year when it comes to interacting with residents. We have a strong belief in resident first design. So that means if you think about the resident, and the process is good for residents, then the overall process will be better too. So even inside the administration, the processes need to work so it's simpler, it's easier to understand, it's easy to find without having any dead ends, and just making it a better experience for the residents. I really suggest, if you haven't heard about service design in government, then have a look at it. There are big things happening around Europe and in Canada as well when it comes to designing better services. And it also goes to the designing of better digital experiences for people. So if you check the Budapest website, budapest.hu today, it's horrible. So you don't have to tell me. I know it's terrible to go there, and just the visual impression that it makes is kind of hurtful. We are aiming at changing that as well. So imagine the massive work that needs to be done to kind of make this city up to speed when it comes to being a modern city and being a city that's thinking about its residents first and that's engaging residents in decision making. So this is what we are working on. And I just put here my email address if you have any questions, or later if you need any help or information about what we do, then you can reach out to me at my email. And yeah, this is the introduction of our work, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Great, thanks a lot. We just imagined some applause for your presentation. Unfortunately, there's no jingle for this on the University of Vienna app. Thanks a lot, Marietta, for this insightful presentation on what the city is working on, what the city has already achieved, how the coronavirus pandemic has slowed down certain processes, as I suppose like almost everywhere in the world. The process, the setup, how we're going to proceed is you can raise questions. There's already one. You are going to call you up in a second. You can just raise your hand as Phil did virtually. If you don't want to raise your voice and you want to type in a question into the chat, you can also do this. And I'm going to read out the question. But let's jump into the discussion. And Phil, the floor is yours.
Hi, first of all, thank you for a really interesting presentation. My question is partly motivated by its political interest and personal curiosity. I lived in Budapest as a Fulbrighter in 2018, 2019. I have not been able to go back despite having funding to do so since then, obviously. And I'm curious what things look like on the ground in terms of COVID testing and vaccination. Are you seeing a lot of resistance to that in Budapest? And if so, how are you dealing with it? You know, obviously this is on my mind as an American. Thanks.
Well, I can only talk about my personal experience. So the COVID testing in our case was very popular. So we actually had the slots filled up in a couple of hours. So it was a very popular initiative. About the vaccination, I cannot really tell if people are against or for. I think you know, in my environment, everyone is going to get vaccinated, which is a good thing, I think. There are some talks around different types of vaccines. I guess this happens in other countries as well. So there is not much difference to that. What is different now is that there has been a sort of lift in the restrictions when it comes to gathering outside. So the government has allowed people to use the fronts and terraces of the restaurants and pubs. And in the past weekend or during the past weekend, a lot of photos have been circulating around on the internet from Budapest, where you can see people sitting together without masks. However, they are outside, so open air, but they are kind of close, and it's a hard thing to see. So I personally didn't go to any of these places and just looked at the pictures, and I feel that, you know, this is something that could have a bigger impact later, and I think that's a different trend from what everyone else is doing in Europe now.
Great, thanks for your response. There was a question in the chat. I'm just going to read it out. So the question is, could you please say a little more about the municipality's strategy in decision-making when residents have conflicting interests? For instance, in a citizen participation process, how are decisions made then, or how do municipal actors like yourself then navigate, moderate debates? A question by Catherine.
Yeah, thank you. this is a very hard it's very hard to answer, because usually the ideal type of situation is when we can get together with people and there is room and time for deliberation. And that changes a lot about how people talk to each other and how much you can moderate these discussions. And one of the things that had a big impression on me, for example, after our Citizens Assembly, both after the Climate Assembly and now after the Participatory Budgeting Assembly, is the feedback from people, and the fact that they said really cheesy things like, finally I feel like I'm heard. And can you imagine people saying that? Like, it means that for many years they haven't experienced this kind of deliberation. So talking to other people, talking to people with different interests, and when you are a moderator or a facilitator of those discussions, what your job is to try to enable those discussions and try to bring out the differences and try to make people to talk about them in a civilized manner. So again, even talking and listening is something we need to learn. And usually when you hold these assemblies, you have the ground rules. So for example, that you don't chat over someone else, or you don't act aggressively, just ground rules that make a civilized conversation happen. And even the experience of that is completely life-changing to people. So Hungary, as you might know, has a history of a very polarized political situation and very polarized media atmosphere as well. So this is not what people see in everyday life, and our job is to make this experience happen to them, which is really hard, because you cannot really teach democracy by 50 people by 50 people. You know, it's kind of like I could do it for a lot of years until everyone in Budapest participates in one session. So I am hoping that that people who participate in our assemblies then spread the word and talk a lot about how it's changed their life, that they are being listened to, and they actually can talk to other people who don't agree with their principles or with their with what they believe in.
Thanks, Marietta. There's another question in the chat, so I'm going to read it out again. So what are the main communication channels to inform people about their participatory approaches? And how efficient are these channels? What are the strategies to be inclusive and reach everyone, even those preferring different types of participation? So a lot of questions for you.
A lot of tough questions. So communication is actually one of my challenges in terms of there's a lot that the municipality wants to talk about, right? So citizen participation is one thing. We have a Facebook page for the Municipality of Budapest, which is called Budapest Városháza, which means like the city hall. There are different kinds of newsletters. So if you go on the budapest.hu website, we actually introduced and finally stepped on the stage of having a municipal newsletter, which hasn't existed before. You know, a big step for the Budapest municipality, small step for everyone else, but really for us, these have been big changes. So we are opening more and more channels in terms of that. I still have to say, you know, it's still a lot of work to reach everyone. So as I said, we rely a lot on the communication channels of our colleagues in district local governments. That means that they promote our citizen participation initiatives in their network or in their local paper. That's how they can help us reach local communities. And those preferring different types of participation, Well, we are still figuring out how different and more vulnerable groups can be represented in these assemblies. So, for example, in the last, the smaller citizens' assembly for participatory budgeting, based on the literature from climate assemblies, I think from around the UK, we introduced a new thing. We actually added 14 extra slots to NGOs representing vulnerable communities. So we were trying to have more participants from these communities, or at least from NGOs that represent them, to make it sure that their voices are heard. And these are, I know these are small steps, but we are trying to make changes in our processes that are more accommodating to people. And in terms of, coronavirus making it really hard for us to engage with people who don't have internet access, we are always trying to figure out ways for them to participate. So in terms of the participatory budgeting assembly, when we posted the invitation to be part of the assembly, we put it down everywhere that we are trying to make sure that if you don't have a computer, you can still participate. Just let us know, and we will try to figure out how to make it happen for you. Actually, there hasn't been such a request, so we need to check if our call didn't go to the communities where this has been an issue, or it's just the internet penetration and the devices people use were okay for participating in the process. This is something we need to have a deeper look at in the future. And if there's someone here listening to me, and if you have any good examples, then please let me know, because as I said, we are trying to read literature from other places and actually try to implement what they did and try to see if it works for us.
Great, thanks. Somebody raised his hand, and there was also a question in the chat. Sebastian Reis was first, so please unmute yourself and you can raise the question.
Thank you very much for the interesting presentation. I have two questions, one concerning the local and one the national level in Hungary. The first question is that your mayor was elected on a united opposition ticket. And how can this coalition govern effectively despite the different interests? Because in this coalition there's Jobbik and there's the Green Party and the Social Democrats. And how can they still unite in a government, because they only have the common enemy, Fidesz and Viktor Orban. But I think do they have more common interests? And the second question is, what is the response of the Orban government? And do you think the model in Budapest is a model for the whole of Hungary after next year's parliamentary elections? Thank you very much.
More easy questions for you.
Yeah, so I actually have to say I don't know to the first question. I know that I have been invited to work at the municipality by the mayor himself, but actually on the grounds that I'm coming from a different background and I'm not a politician. So it's an interesting thing to work at a municipality as someone who comes from an NGO / digital background. I try not to deal with party politics, so I have no idea what to answer to your question regarding the common enemy and things like that, but more to say about the second question, which affects my work a lot. So one thing that's changed since 2019 is the constraint on the budgets of the local governments in Hungary, and that affects the Budapest municipality as well. As much so that we are looking at, big burdens and big restrictions in terms of our budget. So, and it's not helping that the municipality needs to work through the pandemic as well. So these are two very constraining issues. And when it comes to citizen participation, you know, that costs money as well. So we need to have staff, we need to have budget for communication, as it's been asked. So it's a big issue. And one thing that I really like, and you know, it's not about praising my bosses, but there it goes. So we actually had a talk about if we should kill off participatory budgeting or not. And I argued that we shouldn't, because this is the way we can show people that there is hope and we can build a city together when we finally leave the coronavirus pandemic behind. And it's not something that's very straightforward, because some municipal governments, as I said, like there has been like a quote-unquote participatory turn. So participatory budgeting is a very popular methodology that's around in Budapest and in some other cities as well now. And many mayors who have been elected with a program that includes the introduction of participatory budgeting have actually crossed off participatory budgeting in 2020 from their list, because they needed the money for either other things or just the fact that they needed to combat the coronavirus and help with the pandemic interventions. And so it's quite hard to work like that. And it's in terms of like the feeling of how one works in such an environment. You kind of feel like you are a small island where you are making good things happen, and that a lot of things around you are, you know, in a massive, either in a massive chaos, or you know, it's a very complex situation. And so the budgeting issues have been constraining as well, and some of the interventions by the government have been made under the realm of helping with the pandemic. So the local taxation has been changed, and local taxation is an important income for local government, and the state decided letting go of some of that. So that means that there goes a big chunk of the local government's budget. And yeah, that's something that's very restraining, and I can feel it at the everyday level as well.
Great, thanks again. I'm just going to read out another question from the chat. So the question is, how do you foster cooperation with the municipalities surrounding the capital? So it's about cooperation between municipalities. How can their interests be included in participatory formats as well?
Yeah, thank you for this question. So at the moment, there is no direct cooperation with the municipalities in the agglomeration, but the interests of the people are, at least we are trying to represent them in our process. So as you can imagine, in many of the participatory processes, there are points where limitations can be introduced. So who can submit a proposal to a participatory budgeting cycle, or who can vote for it? So I myself am a supporter of the idea of the right to the city. So that means that we should consider everyone a Budapest person or Budapest resident who lives there or works there or who goes to school to Budapest. So there shouldn't be a limit of where your address is registered. And at least in many cases, and the most important example is our participatory budgeting cycle, where we could keep it at this level. So it's completely open in the terms of you kind of have to tick off on a checkbox that I assure you I am living, working, or studying in Budapest, but we are not checking in any other way. if you are really doing that. And I think it's really important because Budapest has a huge population that's residing in the suburbs but works in the city center, and there is a big population of students who are still registered with their parents' address in the countryside. Actually, the registered address issue has been around, and it's been an issue in Budapest for a long time, and I think we shouldn't discriminate people based on what's on their paperwork, and I think we have been good at least keeping the participatory budgeting process open like this. This is something that I tell each and every mayor and deputy mayor who calls me to talk about how it works for us, and I have to say that it's sometimes hard to convince them. So there is this eagerness to check what's on your ID card, where you are from, or somehow to check that you are the person who lives there and you are not making decisions in any other way. And I understand where this comes from, but it poses a big burden when it comes to citizen participation. So a limitation, a bigger step, means that less people are going to participate, and people are going to feel more controlled in terms of that. That's one thing. The other thing, I truly believe that these people are part of our communities, so they should be allowed to vote and submit proposals. And at least in the participatory budgeting process, we could design the process like that.
Thanks for your answer. Are there any further questions from the audience? Otherwise, I have at least two more, but I'm of course not gonna jump in. There is another question. So the question is, how happy were you with the 300 plus participants in the climate assembly in terms of their demographic representativity? Did you notice that certain groups were absent? Also, what type of data do Hungarian statistics display? Which other participants, I guess, would you wish for?
I hope I can understand the question correctly. So we worked with the DEMNet Foundation when it came to the climate assembly, and they looked at a lot of international examples, and they kind of said that with the over 300 responses to our 10,000 invitations, we were in like the average or average low participation rate, so it wasn't too bad. In terms of representativity, thankfully, it was good enough to select a number of people. However, I think out of the 50, around 50 people were participating on all 4 days. Sorry, 40 people were participating on all 4 days. So that slightly changed during the event itself. In terms of signing back on, we found that a little older and more educated population was participating, signing up more. And we had a bit harder time to find younger and less educated people, at least when it came to our second citizens assembly for the participatory budgeting. And that's where we actually introduced this extra measure of NGOs representing vulnerable people. So at the time we knew that this is going to be an issue, and we were trying to compensate based on that. The statistics we worked with from the Hungarian Central Statistics Office. So that showed us where people are from, which district, their age and the education level, and the gender as well. And this is what we used for the second assembly as well. What other statistics I would wish for is actually something I saw in the UK. So as far as I know, we don't have maps of deprivation. So in the UK, they use something called the index of multiple deprivation, and that's something you can request based on postcodes. And we actually collect postcodes when people sign up, because in the Hungarian system you can tell from the postcode which district you are from. So it's an easy way for us to check where someone is from. But the postcodes also show, again, like everywhere else, a smaller area as well. And that would be something that would help us a lot with checking which areas we are actually reaching and what kind of population lives there, so we could better compensate again when we do outreach work and find people who are harder to reach. Actually, this is something that's it's a very complex thing to do, but I think it's worth doing the extra work. So if I had the access to something like that, I think that could help me a lot with the outreach work when it comes to calling up assemblies.
Great, thank you. Any further questions? If there's no question at the moment, I have a question, because I can imagine, I mean, you put a lot of work into erecting new democratic institutions, new democratic formats, and so on. And do you also kind of assess the effect it has on people, in the sense of, do you see that there is kind of a positive effect? I mean, you mentioned that people say this is the first time a government official, or let's say the city as such, approached me and I can raise my voice. Do you do any form of assessment of the impact of this? Question one. Question two is, do you see that the city is gaining, like the city as like the government of the city, of the municipality, is gaining in popularity because of this? So is this something people actually care about, that the city tries to be more inclusive, to listen to the people, as you said, to be there for the people? Do you see an effect? Because I can imagine it was quite a what you do is quite in contrast to the previous mayor coming from Fidesz.
So I have to say, we have just started assessing what we are doing. So after the events, we do feedback sessions with the participants, and that's where we received, for example, those comments. We asked people to tell us how they felt and what it meant for them to be a part of the Participatory Budgeting Assembly. I have to say that for me, the assembly was a very interesting experience, because people cared a lot about where the money goes. So they were really, really strict with what can go for the voting phase. And we actually told them that, you know, it does matter, because there are more proposals than we have money for. And so they were really careful about what should be passed on. So I think in terms of telling people how the municipality works and telling people what the money is spent on in general is a lot of educational work that we need to do whenever someone comes on board at an assembly or a co-creation workshop, because it's not their job to know that complex and very bureaucratic system. So when they come on board, we actually have to be able to explain them in simpler ways what we are working on and where does the money come from and how do we develop things. So I think the impact will be measurable sometime by now, because this is the first time that we actually have projects delivered. I know that there are some academics who are looking at the Budapest participatory budgeting cycle, and we work a lot with them in terms of gaining data and trying to publish our experiences and what can be told about political participation. So there are some people at the Corvinus University who are doing that. So hopefully we'll see something coming out of that too. And regarding gaining popularity, it's a tough question to answer. I don't know about any measurements when it comes to how much people like or feel the change in after seeing the citizen participation issues. I think it's more of something that can be assessed qualitatively and at our assemblies. So I think when we have an effect on people's lives, that's actually in that area. People who are taking part of this decision making, they are definitely feeling that it's a very positive experience. But I have to say that I don't have any information at the moment about how it's making our mayor more popular, for example.
Yeah, but if you don't have data, this is fine. I mean, the city government is also in power since 1.5 years. But what is your general impression? I mean, also, I mean, we know that, I mean, there are certain issues with the media system in Hungary. So how does like private and public media report on your activities? Is it kind of, what is like the public reception of those activities? Because this also will certainly shape public opinion regarding the city's activities on political participation and all the other things you mentioned.
I think one thing that makes it hard for us is the polarized environment. So I think citizen participation is not about party politics. So it's about making better cities and better living environments for ourselves. But in a polarized environment, it's sometimes hard to explain that in the media because everything is over politicized. So even if you invite people to a citizens assembly, for example, then in this kind of media environment, it's made fun of by some media outlets as part of, you know, something that the mayor does, and it's ridiculous. However serious it is, it's not helping our cause. Or sometimes I feel like it's helping our cause because sometimes it's just something that's been published in a more balanced media outlet and copied over to a more polarized outlet, and they just change the title to something ridiculous, and then everything else is like from a more balanced publication. So I feel like, well, this actually helps our coverage. It's very hard to decide what's the effect of those articles on the people. And because there is less media that can report in a balanced manner about these initiatives, it's actually very hard to promote them. So I don't think it's surprising that Facebook is a very important channel for our work and even for the mayor, because there you can publish the news about your work, and it's not going to be distorted in any format. And yeah, so it's a communication is, I think, an everyday challenge for citizen participation anyway. So you have to ask people to come to your table and participate in a conversation. And in a challenging media environment, those invitations might not be heard. So the methodology of sending out invitations by the letter actually could better help than trying to fight for media coverage, because at least people will open the letter and see the invitation and see a nice description of what we are inviting them to, and might better believe what the letter says than what the media publishes about something.
Thanks a lot for your answer. Since we're slowly approaching the end of the public talk, which is going to last for another 10 minutes, I would just collect the last round of questions. So you can again raise your virtual finger or type a question into the chat if you desire to. I mean, I still would have like one last question, at least from my side. I mean, there is a lot happening on the Visegrad country level. And we know this format that Poland, the Czech Republic, Slovakia, and Hungary having this cooperation. And there's also a lot of stuff going on with the 4 capitals. I mean, in a way, I mean, it's kind of a bit of your not expertise, but of the topic of citizen participation. But I was just wondering if cities like Warsaw, Prague, Bratislava, or Budapest also cooperate on the topics you work for, because I mean, in general, we see some decreasing democratic standards in all 4 countries on a different scale, but still, and all 4 capitals kind of, at least in some formats, join forces to try to counter this development. So I was just wondering if you can talk a bit about this. First question. And now, since somebody put something into the chat, I'm also going to read out the question, since we're going to collect the questions. So I'm just going to read out the question. It is also a bit longer. So you talked about the corona testing service in Budapest, which is needed indeed, which indeed is a democratic innovation. But are there also some testing possibilities in other cities? So was there kind of a spillover effect from the initiative in Budapest to other areas, or is Budapest an exceptional case? And following that, or more generally, is Budapest alone with democratic innovations, or are there already some examples of other cities that started some initiatives that had a positive effect on democracy? So was there a spillover effect according democratic innovations from Budapest to other cities in Hungary, I suppose? You can also start with this question if you want to, depending on your preference.
Well, we can go back to yours too. Firstly, just briefly, I wanted to say that in terms of citizen engagement, we actually reached out to Bratislava just before the pandemic started, and we wanted to have a site visit there, and that never happened. I'm still thinking about that we should do it, but in general, there is an openness to cooperate regarding the experience with citizen participation. Budapest has placed a lot of importance on city diplomacy. So, and actually that's something that's helping me a lot personally. So with for example, with the participatory budgeting, we are using the open source software of the Paris municipality. And they helped us a lot when we launched our website to collect the ideas and proposals. So I think there's a lot of cooperation around that. And I really like the fact that citizen participation is something all municipalities are interested in at this moment. And some cities have more experience with it, and some cities have less, but we can exchange our ideas and experiences, and sometimes the assets as well, just like the open source software. So I think that's working really well, and we are trying to do the same actually with Hungarian local governments and cities. So I actually just today had a brief talk with someone from a city outside Budapest who is trying to introduce participatory budgeting in their city. So they asked about the experience and how to do that, and everything around what went well and what we would change if we did it differently. So there is a lot around that, and actually tying up to the coronavirus rapid testing, that's happened with that too. So we had some other local governments with the either with the software that's been used by one local government, but also Budapest municipality gave rapid tests to other municipal governments, so they can use it at their own will. So make the distribution happen as they want to, or use it for their own municipal workers or companies. So it had somehow both a spillover and a cooperation effect that's been very important. And regarding the spillover effect of democracy initiatives, I think it's less of a spillover, more like this is something that happens now, or it's gained popularity with the 2019 elections. So I would say citizen participation is an important topic, not only in opposition-led districts, but other districts and municipalities as well, at least for the try. So to give it a go and try to figure out if it can work for your municipal government. And I think it's a great thing to at least try to do something better. So the spillover effect in general forces all municipalities to have a better look at what they can do differently. I hope it's not going to have a more harmful effect by not doing the methodology correctly and not helping with restoring trust in residents. At the moment, I am more hopeful, and there is a lot of helping out of each other when it comes to sharing our activities and experiences.
Great, thanks again for your responses. One more question, and we have some 4 more minutes. So the question is, was Vienna's experience with participatory events and processes interesting or helpful to Budapest too?
Yeah, so Budapest is always looking at Vienna as a good example, so I'm not going to hide that. My colleagues actually went on a site visit to Vienna early on after the change in leadership happened in 2019. So both on the participatory issues as well as regarding greenery and smart strategies in the city, that's something we are looking at. I think what Vienna is doing well, and like if I have to criticize my own work, like there's very little available about my work in English. So it's very important that other people from your area of expertise know about your work. And I think what's helping a lot as well, because I'm not speaking German, that there is information available, there are websites available, and there is actually a good outreach work around what Vienna is doing, so we can learn a lot from that. And I think it is great, and actually it has there was an attempt at even having an exchange about rapid testing as well, because I also knew about the fact that it's happened in Vienna, so we almost had an exchange about that too.
Great. I think all questions that wanted to be asked have been asked. And I would like to thank you, Marietta, for this very honest and interesting talk, providing a lot of information about what the city is doing, your first achievements, the things you struggle with. And I think it was quite insightful to all of you. I would also like to thank the audience for the questions. And I think if somebody wants to reach out to you, I mean, you already put out your email address on the slide. We are happy to receive some emails to get feedback, whatever comments, or also some hints if there are any out there. Great. So then it's just my task to
yeah,
close
thank you, and thanks a lot for having me.
The event. I'm glad that you could at least virtually came to Vienna. Hopefully this is going to be the case also physically at some point when this pandemic is over at some point, I hope. So thanks again, Marietta. Thanks again to the audience. And yeah, have a nice evening, stay healthy, and let's hope that we can see each other also physically at some point soon in time.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.